Headspace by Ali Chopping. Ellie is a 21-year-old girl. Growing up, her father was in the army. She was raised with a lot of discipline and manners. She was taught a lot of responsibility and to do as she was told. Her father was often overseas serving the country, so he wasn't always home. Ellie and her father weren't very close and she felt very distant from him. Ellie felt that if the male in her life wasn't home, she needed to replace that lost feeling. When Ellie was in year 8, her family moved to a town called Strathalbyn in the beautiful Adelaide Hills. This is when Ellie noticed her headspace wasn't right. She was depressed and didn't understand why. After living in Strath and attending high school for a couple of months, Ellie got close to the boy living next door. His name was Stephen. Ellie spent almost every day with Stephen and his mates. When he eventually asked her to be his girlfriend, she happily accepted. Stephen and his mates smoked weed and slowly introduced it to Ellie. Not being aware of the substance much, she uneasily and unsurely tried the offer and smoked some. Feeling happy and feeling as though her depression and anxiety had gone, Ellie continued to smoke it. Ellie and Stephen were together most of their adolescent life. From the age of 15 to 19, they really only knew of this relationship being love. Ellie did what she thought was best for her in a relationship, and that was whatever Stephen expected from her. Stephen didn't treat her right. He started to control her. This pushed Ellie into the wrong headspace. He told her who she could and couldn't hang out with, where she could and couldn't go, and even when to be home. If Ellie didn't obey, Stephen would make her feel that she was a bad person. He would call her nasty things. Ellie slowly distanced herself from her friends and her family. After she graduated year 12, Ellie felt that she still only loved Stephen. She stuck by him and spent most of her nights staying next door at his house and hardly saw her friends or her family. Ellie was ashamed and afraid to let her mother know of what troubles were going on in the relationship and where her headspace was. Soon enough, Stephen began using meth, better known as ice. Ellie could see the difference in him when she came home from work. She soon figured out he was on ice. Disappointed in Stephen, she questioned why he continued using. Stephen and his friends thought an easy option was to tell her to calm down and to try to understand it. Ellie felt like a fool when everyone laughed at her. Stephen promised he wouldn't let anything happen to her and he would help her through it, so she foolishly and regretfully accepted the dance with the devil and smoked it for the first time. Months passed quickly. The drug had taken over Ellie and her boyfriend's life. She rapidly dropped her weight and lost herself deeply. She lost connection with many of her friends and was too ashamed to let her family see what the drug had done to her. As her anxiety increased, she scarred her body and pulled out her hair strand by strand. The fighting between Ellie and Stephen increased. This cycle led to more self-harming and attacking herself. Ellie saw herself as a failure and didn't know how her family would see her. They had tried so hard to raise their daughter the right way and all she did was get into the wrong crowds and wrong behaviour. Ellie didn't like the person she had become, so she tried to commit suicide. After several attempts, the fear of disappointing her family stopped her from going through with it. Ellie's mother was smarter than she thought. She loved her little girl too much to let her waste away to nothing. She couldn't watch her go through so much pain. She believed Ellie would be better off living in the Northern Territory with her cousin Betty, so she did what she thought was best. At first, Ellie didn't agree with her mother making such a decision without her approval, but she did as she was told and packed her bags. Ellie quickly found work at the local food barn in Tennant Creek. Starting to feel like herself again, Ellie worked full-time and made new friends while saving money. She felt as though she was on the right track again and felt confident in herself. Ellie was introduced to an old family friend named Dave. Her instincts kicked in and she felt attracted to this young man and they seemed to get along really well. Ellie found out he sold weed and without a second thought, she brought a bag and started smoking again. They became close and Ellie felt an overwhelming rush of emotions. They soon became a couple. Not long after, they moved in with one another. Ellie was still working full-time while Dave dealt weed. Trouble began to occur. Without question, Ellie would do what she felt was best and do as she was told. This included placing money in the bank, answering the door to his customers, and making deals. Her biggest mistake was when she said yes to driving to Alice Springs. They went to meet his friend who picked up a large amount of weed in South Australia for him to sell. She thought about her past relationship and the consequences she faced when she didn't do as she was asked. She thought she would be treated in the same way and got herself involved by saying yes to all these favours. The police had bugged her boyfriend's phone and knew of all his plans. Because of this, they were arrested and put into jail. Because Ellie's family loved her so much, they put in money to get her bail. The judge approved and she returned home to her family in Strathalbyn on bail conditions. Ellie was doing well. She followed all the conditions of her bail. She wanted the judge to know the person they found caught up in this crowd was acting out of character. She felt as though there was hope. Ellie worked 3 jobs in the Mallee region of South Australia. She worked in the pub, in the post office, and as a barista in the cafe. She worked really hard. She thought if she stayed out of trouble, she would have a good chance of not going back to jail. It eventually came to sentencing day. After a year of nerves and numb feelings, it came to a sudden conclusion. Ellie said her goodbyes and gave her love to her family and friends, just in case luck wasn't on her side. The judge's decision finally came to settle the minds of many. She decided it was better for Ellie and her ex-partner to spend time in jail to rethink what they had done. She ordered Ellie to spend 6 months in Alice Springs prison, 12 months on supervision and 3 years on good behaviour. Ellie is now in jail. She feels lost and in a mess of a headspace. She recollects herself every day. Her thoughts of freedom had been wrong. She thinks of the past and what happened for her life to end up like this. She regrets the mistakes she made in her life. Her family members would have never thought she'd be the one to end up in jail. They hadn't known of her abusive past. She misses her family so much it hurts her and she crumbles on the inside. She does all she can to keep her head up and stay out of trouble now that she's in jail. Ellie thinks of what she will accomplish when she gets out. But for now, she plays sport, she works in any job she can get and keeps herself busy by reading to pass the time. She marks down each and every day that comes and goes, counting down to her release date. Ellie hopes that she will be transferred to South Australia so she can be back home with her friends and family. She feels that when she is home, her headspace will be clear and she'll be ready for a better and brighter future. The end.